We are live, broadcasting officially only on onedealaway.com/live. My name is Nev, this is Money Matters, and today we're talking, well, more crypto. So, in this Monday morning, beautiful Monday morning, October 5th, we're going to be discussing a little bit of what is going on with the regulation when it comes to crypto. We've been talking about some exchanges, some protocols, some different things that exist, and all of that is really, really cool. But I think it's important to understand some of the regulations that exist out there. And if that's of interest to you, well, today's episode is definitely for you. I personally think that it's very, very important as we all navigate this very, very new waters of what's going on. So we're going to take a look at what the regulations are actually saying and how potentially centralized versus decentralized finance may or may not affect it, and sort of what the developers should be looking out for, as well as users, because could something like this reach out to the users. We're going to be looking at a way, if you're curious about, maybe I set up my company, my crypto company, my crypto business in a jurisdiction that is a bit more open, and you're thinking, maybe I'll go to Switzerland. Well, we do have information of how you can actually set it up. It's a bit complex, but at least there are regulations that are relatively, you can follow. I was going to say relatively simple, but it's complex. And then finally, we're going to be talking a bit about Honey Badger. No, Honeyswap. Honeyswap. You've heard of a Uniswap, and we're going to briefly discuss Honeyswap because it is a potentially new hot thing, and you definitely want to know about it if you are wanting to trade, provide liquidity, stake, farm, do all that crazy stuff, and you want to save money on fees. I'm all about paying less unless I have to, and that's the only option, right? So if I can save a little bit of money, why not? So let's do this. And good morning, happy Monday to you. So here we go. We're gonna go and get started right away. But before we do, I do want to welcome everybody watching this live on onedealaway.com, and everybody watching this wherever you are, home, office, car, walking around, I don't care, that is watching on places like YouTube or Facebook or wherever else the video or audio may end up on. So I do want to welcome you. Do me a huge favor. Make sure you sign in if you're visiting this live. Make sure you say hello. I'm going to do Q&A at the end of the session as always. And if you're watching this or listening to this elsewhere, do me a huge favor. Subscribe. If there's some sort of like button, please like it. If there's a way to forward it, send it on. If there's a way to get notification, enable it. Go ahead and do it, so that way every day that the show goes live and shows up, you get notified and you don't miss a thing. All right, let's do this. So here we go. We're going to, of course, look at the market and what's going on. And, we've been looking before and it was mostly red. Look at this. Green, 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 green. I mean, there's reds. There's, of course, reds, but it's green. Now, of course, Bitcoin has been predominantly flat. Like we said, it's been around that 10,005 to 10,600. Today, as of this morning, right now, it's trading at $10,681.66. Thank you very much. And it's basically flat. It's 0.9% in the green, which is basically flat. Ethereum is at 351.88, and it's up like what, 1.7%. Again, mostly flat when we take a look into it. We do have some that have some coins that have done pretty okay, but nothing like earth-shattering movements. Zilliqa is one of those. It's up 11.9%. We talked about Zilliqa, yesterday, day before yesterday, as some potential bullish things that could happen there. And over the course of 7 days, Zilliqa is up 36.3%. So congrats if you hold some ZIL. Celsius is third. XRP was second at 7.3 and 2.8 for the week. And it's at a whopping 24 cents. But they have been at that 23, 24, 25 cents for years now. For years. Celsius is up 6.6% over the course of 24 hours, up 47% um, at 7-day mark, and 15.2% in the last hour. So Celsius is in number 3 as the top gainer and has been performing. After that, we just basically go down to 5, 4, 3, 2, and then hit basically mostly zero, where a bunch of coins are hanging out. Wi-Fi is at or Wi-Fi or YFI, or I don't know how you call it. You're in finance. Is up 5.5 over the course of 24 hours. XEM 4.9, BTG 4.2, Kyber Network KNC at 3.9, and it goes down from there. When we look at the biggest losers, well, the biggest loser is Ampleforth right now at negative 10.9% for the 24-hour period, but it's still positive at 15.4% over the course of 7 days, and it's still below $1. So it means that they are burning money, meaning that the supply is not quite there, which is fine. EGLD is the second loser at negative 9.1. EWT is a third one at negative 8.4. UMA at 6.5. Uniswap negative 6.4. LRC 6 ran negative 3.2, and then it goes down into the ones and single, or the like a 0 point something, which is basically not much of anything. So there you go. That's what the market is looking like. Overall, I would say the market, especially when we look at capitalization, is predominantly neutral. Not much happening one way or the other. Now, we did talk briefly about Bitcoin, right? And, folks are like, is this good? Is this not good? It hasn't been doing much of anything. And I've told you, I'm still very, very bullish on the thing. And the quieter it goes, the more bullish I get, which is contrary to most folks. Most folks wanted to, we want to see 40% gain days. But those are scary, because when you see that, you see it on the way down. And, if this is going to be a storage of wealth, then, slow, progressive sort of movements up is exactly what we want. Now, I know that not everybody holds that same perspective, and I know the vast majority of folks are going to go completely against of what I am saying over here. But let's take a look at this article that I found really, really interesting and important. A well-known Bitcoin influencer and analyst basically said that the top cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, could skyrocket to 5 million US dollars. Let's take a look at what he had to say. The currency supply of the world is currently valued at $100 trillion. If Bitcoin takes over, that would put Bitcoin at approximately $5 million per Bitcoin. Now, is it going to take over? Probably not, but it is kind of, thing to think about, right? I mean, anything is possible, right? Anything is possible, but the probability of that happening is probably on the lower end. So, but I think it is an interesting food for thought to kind of think through. It is obvious that Bitcoin is eventually going to break 20,000. I agree with that statement. Bitcoin is looking extremely bullish, much more bullish than on a technical level, because he's basically looking at it from the point of the banks are printing cryptocurrencies, and of course that's going to push more folks towards Bitcoin, which is a possibility. He says that the most traders will likely lose money trying to time BTC price action. I agree with that. If people that hold Bitcoin will be the biggest winners. Traders make more money than holders if they actively trade and know what they're doing. So you got to have both. You got to actively trade and you got to know what you're doing. But people that are not experienced tend to lose money when trading, and approximately 80 to 90% of people that trade actually lose money over time. And that is a scary proposition. So if you're going to trade, you got to learn how to trade, and that takes, well, time and money and energy and commitment. So it's possible that you can become a very good trader, that you can make a lot of money trading, but please also know that vast majority of people lose money trading. So that's a piece that you want to understand. And there's, of course, taxation pieces and all the other stuff that comes along with it. Bitcoin is currently in a bull market, but I'm not so sure that we have started the big Bitcoin bull run just yet. And a high that we had recently at $14,000 back in June and July of 2019. And the first step that needs to happen, in his opinion, is that we got to break this level. When that happens, I can say for sure we are guaranteed in a bull market. So, and then he's saying that once we get that, that obviously we're going to get a 20,000. And if we break 20,000, well, then off to the moon, off to the moon. So let me know what you think. Are we going to the moon, or are we going to go, 20, 40, 50, 100,000? Do you think it's a bull market or a bear market? Where do you see things going in the future? I'm curious to know. Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the chat. Do understand that I do check on those things and I do respond. So do hit me up. Now, here's the part that we talked about. We talked about, well, what if you wanted to start some sort of crypto business? The investing side, the technology side, the trading side, the whatever side, the side, and you're looking at some of different areas where you can go and do stuff. Well, many people decide to go to Switzerland, for example, to do that business, and here is why. Here it is, a guide to setting up a crypto business in Switzerland in case you are interested. And there's a little crypto coin hanging out on the mountain with the, sunbathing with the, snow is everywhere except where the little coin is. And that is where we see some grass and some flowers, which is very, very interesting. And it's interesting also that, up here we do have snow mostly, but down here is grass and the river is flowing through it. So, all right, now that I've described the photo and you are thinking, what a nutto, let's take a look at the crypto regulators and the types of regulations. The Swiss Financial Market Supervisory Authority, or FINMA, regulates banks, crypto, and fintech projects. There are 5 types of authorizations for financial activities: licensing, recognition, authorization, approval, and registration. Commonly, only 2 of these are being used by fintech: recognition and authorization. Types of authorization includes permitted activities, client onboarding options, jurisdiction where you operate, documents that you accept for identification purposes, storing customer information, anti-money laundering procedures, transaction limits, capital requirements, regularity methodology of audits, and many, many, many other things. And when you're looking to get into the business, of course you got to apply for all these licenses and stuff, but you have an ability to try to sort of limit the huge costs of doing that stuff that banks are typically required to do. And you can do that by joining what is known a sandbox. So you can start a crypto service in the so-called FINMA sandbox. The startup can entirely develop the product, accept customer money, sell financial services, issue bank cards, and can carry out many other activities even before obtaining authorization. Now, there's the requirements, or there are requirements to qualify to get into the sandbox. And here are the requirements. The total amount of assets received from clients does not exceed 1 million Swiss francs or $1.1 million US dollars. The received funds are not invested and interest is not paid, and depositors must be informed in advance that FINMA does not supervise fintech and the safety of funds deposited is not guaranteed by the insurance. So you got to let them know. You got to have a, relatively speaking, small base, and you can't pay them interest or invest their money. So you can use it for other things, but those are things that you can do. Now, if you meet these requirements, you can temporarily go without authorization from the regulator, and you have to prepare a legal memorandum about this stuff. Of course, you're going to have to hire attorneys for that to help you with it. Now, step two, self-regulatory organizations. Most startups do not have millions of Swiss francs required to obtain a full banking license from FINMA, including meeting the minimum capital requirements. In this case, you can join one of the 11 self-regulatory organizations known as SROs operating in Switzerland and receive the status of a financial intermediary. A financial intermediary requires regulatory approval for each individual type activity instead of all of them at once. So instead of getting this blanket thing for everything, you can then just say, all right, well, I want to do this, this, and this, but I don't care about anything else, right? So that's a cool and important piece to understand. SRO members can conduct more than 10 types of activities. These include asset management, foreign exchange transactions, money transfers, along with insurance and new payment methods, including cryptocurrency operation and others. To join the SRO costs several thousands of Swiss francs, which includes a number of annual payments, audit fees, etc. So they're basically sharing in their case, this was more than several $1,000s. This was more like several tens of thousands of dollars, because to me several thousand is like, you know, 6 7, but in their example they're basically saying, well, you know, we have 60,000 users, and to get an SRO cost us $110,000 per year. And I'm like, that's not, you know, several thousand, that's several tens of thousands, or into the 100,000. If you decide to join the SRO, be prepared to pay large legal support costs, which can range from 150 to 400 Swiss francs, which is $165,000 to $435,000. So that's one piece that you need to be aware of. It takes 3 months from the date of application to join SRO, and you can use the fast track processing option that takes just weeks for about 1,500 Swiss francs or $1,600. Which, you know, if you're going to spend, you know, anywhere between $165,000 and $450,000 to do this stuff, you might as well fast track that puppy and just pay additional $1,600 and call it a day. I mean, right? Like it's a no-brainer. It's kind of like, you know, it's going to cost you, you know, $500,000 to buy this home, but the inspection is going to be $100, and people are like, oh, I don't want to pay $100. Wait, what? Like, you've done everything else. So, you know, at that point, you might as well just pay it and get it done in 2 weeks, as opposed to waiting months to get it done. Now, there are certain exceptions that may apply depending on the model of the fintech product. A company is not considered to be banking if it meets requirements that apply to participants in the regularly sandbox, which we've discussed. A license of saving is not required for assets that arise in payment system and neobanks and are recognized as non-deposits if the following conditions are met. Peer-to-peer operations are prohibited. Maximum balance per client does not exceed 3,000 Swiss francs, which is $3,299. That's a really hard bar to kind of pass. I mean, and then no interest paid on funds, which, you know, the other things are pretty easy, but this is the hard one. That, you know, 3,000 Swiss francs. I'm like, come on, man. So, anyways, and then exception 3 is settlement accounts are also not deposits that you can operate. Companies don't hold deposit to execute a client's transaction. No interest credited to the account. Duration of the transaction is limited, and there are also a few other points that concern only crypto services. There are additional requirements for crypto companies in many countries, and Switzerland is no exception. Crypto services can accept fiat money without obtaining a banking license when the following conditions are met. 1. Settlement for the purchase or sale of cryptocurrency and temporarily arising obligations to fulfill them fall under one of the exceptions given above that we just talked about, right? The amounts and that kind of stuff. The fact of ownership of cryptocurrency by each client is reflected in blockchain directly and separate from the company's funds. And each cryptocurrency deposit can be attributed to a specific client at any given time. So basically, over here, it goes directly to the client, and so they have a full custody of the private keys, right? So that's basically what that means. The storage should be designed so that the user at all times use their own private keys. Such solution can only be applied to cryptocurrency due to its technological features. However, it's not necessarily possible with the fiat, of course. For each business model, you need to look for your own optimal authorization method that will allow you to bring the product to market faster and at a lower cost. Legal companies will certainly help with this, but the result will largely depend on how well the founder understands the issue. And I agree. So, if you're thinking of doing this stuff, I think that this is sort of a primer. It just gives you a scratch of a surface of like a postcard. Maybe this is nice to visit. If you decide to do this, again, not a financial, not a legal, not an accounting advice, just something that I think would make sense, is to reach out to the local companies that deal with legal, financial, and accounting things, and have an understanding. Have them explain to you what options exist, and have them give you materials that you can read and study upon. Of course, you explain what you're trying to do, then they explain what you can and cannot do, and how do we make all of this work out. And so those are the pieces that you definitely want to pay attention to. And kind of, if you're thinking of doing that, that might be a good way to do it. Now, speaking of regulations and stuff, it's time to also look at the U.S. regulations when it comes to exchanges, centralized, decentralized. We've had some things with regulations that have sort of popped up, and questions always arise of, are certain things should be regulated, should not be regulated? Is this legal? Is it not legal? Is it a security? Is it not security? Am I liable? Am I not liable? So let's take a look at this article that I found really, really interesting, and it's a bit longer article. I won't lie, but I think it's incredibly important article. And it talks a lot about, there's no such thing as decentralized exchange, but it talks a lot about regulations. The title here is not necessarily what I thought I was going to see in the article itself. I thought it was going to be one thing, and it turned out to be something completely different. And it's definitely the regulatory piece that I think it's very, very important that we talk about here and today. So, basically, the first argument is that there's no such thing as decentralized exchange. And here's the example. Volume through centralized exchanges has outstripped volume on major centralized exchanges. We all agree that. We know that. We know the amount that has been locked up, and it's continuously developing and stuff, right? And we're actually going to talk about one of the brand new developments as soon as we're done with this article, so stay tuned for that. Regulators have come to expect that any exchange from one cryptocurrency to another will by necessity occur to trusted third parties. And this is unlikely to change with regards to exchanges between sovereign currency, also known as fiat, and cryptocurrencies. However, it will soon no longer be the case for exchanges between cryptocurrencies. And we see that right now with DEXs, right? With decentralized exchanges, where you can go from, Ethereum to the wrapped Bitcoin to DAI to Uni to Compound to whatever, right? You can play around all you want. The shift is happening even more rapidly than folks originally thought it would. If a decentralized exchange is truly decentralized, then grammatically speaking, it's an action, not a thing. And that's his big argument in the first piece over here. And I'm like, okay, I get it, but it gets much more interesting from here. When I use free software and an open blockchain network to trade one token for another directly from another with another trader, then I'm engaging in a decentralized exchange in an action. Corporations and persons, legal or natural, definitely have an agency and obligation. Software tools do not. Corporations and persons can be held responsible for their actions. Software tools cannot. And here's the piece where they're driving sort of this distinction between centralized versus decentralized, and who's responsible for what, and where do the rules and regulations sort of lie on. The tools itself can't be treated as a target of regulation anymore, that we could place legal obligation on hammers instead of carpenters, or automobiles instead of drivers. And so that kind of compares the, if I was to get in a car accident, for example, and the car was fully functional, right? Like it's not the manufacturing component that is a challenge. Everything was working, the brakes are working, the gas is right, like everything is working, but I was just not observant, maybe, or whatever, right? Then it's not the car's fault, it's the driver's fault. And so the same thing that is sort of extended to say, well, if you build a software that allows us to trade, to exchange, to buy things, sell things, that kind of stuff, then it's really the onus is on the traders and the people using the exchange, not necessarily the software that just is basically a tool that allows us to do a certain thing. Now, they're saying that there are three distinct areas of policy that are particularly relevant to decentralized exchanges, and I think to a lot of crypto projects. So let's take a look at what those are. Well, it's financial surveillance, known as anti money laundering, securities regulation, and constitutional law. The first two categories, the surveillance and the securities regulation, are regulatory structures that may or may not apply to person developing, implementing, hosting, or using decentralized exchange infrastructure. Third, can be a shield for those people in certain circumstances. So let's go in and learn about how this all works in case you ever thought about, maybe I'm going to build an exchange on my own. I don't know. Maybe you will. I'm sorry, y'all. Something is. It's probably my eyelash that twisted and it's poking my eye. And sorry, I am super fidgety today. Since the 1970s, the Secrecy Act, the BSA, a federal law, has obligated financial institutions serving U.S. persons to collect and report certain information about their customers. This is the law obligates exchanges to do KYC, know your customer checks, and to report suspicious transactions. We have argued repeatedly that we only activities performed using cryptocurrencies that should trigger surveillance obligation are those in which a person or business has actual control over the cryptocurrency of another person, their customer, and acts on their behalf. This mirrors traditional financial services. The same should be true with respect to cryptocurrency business. Only custodial wallets and exchanges providers like Kraken and Coinbase should be required to comply with the BSA. So what they're basically saying is that, hey, if you're not acting on behalf of your customers, right, and they hold their own private keys and that kind of stuff, the BSA shouldn't apply. Now, FinCEN, you might know about FinCEN. We talked about it. So it's the financial regulatory body that oversees the banks. And we talked about FinCEN specifically when we talked about the big banks that are basically helping launder money around the world and do business with the shady individuals that they shouldn't be doing business with. Remember that when that was leaked? So that's what FinCEN is. They have offered clear guidelines explaining that a person don't have independent control over customer funds will not be subject to the registration and surveillance requirement of the BSA. So they're basically saying, we agree. If you don't hold their keys, they hold their own keys, you don't have to comply with this law. You are safe. You are good to go. So as far as the financial surveillance regulation, if software facilitating a decentralized exchange is designed to never give some third-party custody over the cryptocurrency and to simply match persons who settle traders peer-to-peer, then the developers of that software are not regulated under the BSA. That is very, very good to know. Now we get into the securities regulations. So BSA is one thing, right? So we've checked that off, but now we get into the securities. The securities is controlled by SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? It makes sense. The object of securities regulation is to protect investors from fraud and misrepresentation. As such, securities laws only apply when asset being traded is, well, a security. A definition of security is the thing that is complex and flexible, and it's very, very challenging of kind of understanding, but they do give here a very short answer of what is or is not potentially a security, and I think that there's a lot more legally that could be argued one way or the other. So it's a bit confusing. I won't lie. I read it a few times and I'm like, all right, I think I get it. So let's go through it. The short answer is that tokens that do not have an issuer upon whom token holders rely for an expectation of future profits are not securities. In practice, this means that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies like it are not securities because there is no central issuer who manages the network and promotes and sells some initial offering of a token. So, if there's a centralized piece, like I issue some tokens and I control that stuff, and you might be relying on, on that it's going to go basically future, it's going to go up in the future and all of that stuff, then it's a security. But if there's no issuer where you rely on for an expectation of future growth and profits, then it's not a security. New tokens that travel on decentralized networks but were initially sold in a pre-sale as a promise of the developers are a great area. So this is the part that is one of those, like, well, it sort of depends. It's kind of like art, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. What is art? What is beautiful to you may be really ugly to me. What makes you, get really, really excited makes me potentially want to puke, right? So this is an interesting piece. This is that gray piece about it. The initial sale was a security offering, but if the network today is truly decentralized, then the resultant token on a running network may not be a security. For example, EOS, the promoters of which settled with the SEC over their pre-sale, admitting that the pre-sale token was a security, but the current network token is not regulated as a security. So this is the part that is really weird, that SEC is playing by the old rules and old books, that the new asset class is really hard to fit into the box, right? It's a square box, round peg, not quite working. And so they're trying to kind of like, make it work. And so while you could potentially violate the SEC regulation at one point, because the digital assets are mutating in a form, it becomes sort of weird. It's like, I don't know now. Now, if a token is a security, then it cannot legally trade on exchanges that are not SEC regulated. This is the part that becomes a little bit weird. The definition of an exchange in the securities law is broader and more flexible than the definition in the BSA. If you are developing or implementing a tool for decentralized exchange, and if some of the tokens that are trading within that tool are securities, then you might be liable for facilitating operating an unregistered securities exchange. So this is the hard part, because you're developing decentralized exchange, right? That nobody's controlling. Anybody can list coins however they want, and some of these coins could potentially be securities that might violate some of the laws because they didn't register and so on as securities. Then by default, your exchange and you as a developer of that exchange could potentially be liable. This is the part that is really, really strange and weird, that makes it very, very challenging to try to navigate these waters. If someone developing or implementing tools related to decentralized exchange was ever charged with violating securities law or financial surveillance law, they may be able to use constitutional law as an affirmative defense. So this is the defense part of it that is very interesting. First Amendment in freedom of speech rights, and Fourth Amendment rights against warrantless searches and seizures. So if a developer is creating and releasing versions of decentralized exchange software to the general public, not also advocating that illegal usage, collecting fees, or maintaining a website, then there's a strong case that this software publishing activity alone is constitutionally protected expression. It's just an expression freedom of speech that you are putting out there, allowing folks to freely exchange their messages and tokens, right? So that's one of the arguments, right? The open source decentralized exchange software is a particular type of content that advocates a strongly held political viewpoint that we should be able to engage in payments and transaction free of middlemen and censorship. in practice, strict scrutiny forbids the state from passing laws that create a prior restraint on speech. That is to say, a ban on speech that is in place before the speech is actually made. This is the the cart and the horse component of like, well, you can't have a horse, but you have a cart first, and you can't put one in, like, it's right. It's weird. Any law that attempts to ban the publication of decentralized exchange software or make publication illegal without a license or some other precondition would be a prior restraint. In practice, courts always find these forms of regulation to be unconstitutional. So basically, what I understand in reading this is that you can go out there, you can put in this exchange, and then you could potentially get in trouble for doing it, but you can't be banned of putting it out there on the piece that you don't have regulation, because it would be unconstitutional. So again, it's a chicken and an egg. It's like do it and it's wrong, don't do it and it's wrong. Or in other words, to take a look into it is, you know, do it and it's right, don't do it and it's right. So it's a very interesting component of the whole thing. And again, I do believe that if you're kind of engaging in this stuff or thinking about engaging in this stuff, seeking some of the assistance from folks, just like I talked about the whole fact of, I think auditing of the smart contracts is really, really important before being released onto the mainnet kind of stuff, right? Before people's monies can potentially be destroyed. You also want to potentially look at some of the regulations and see what does or doesn't make sense and how to best roll things out there. Now, we did talk about, or I did promise that we're going to talk about the new Uniswap, and it's called Honeyswap. Honeyswap is now the new Uniswap with way less fees. So let's take a look. So here it is. If we watch the live coin watch, you can see the traffic estimates, and it's gone up, and it's sort of like plateaued over here. So it's still not quite. We can probably take a look at the monthly, yearly, daily. As you can see, it's definitely going on up. I don't know. Okay, all right. So 7 days, right? You can kind of see it's climbing on up. So it's definitely picking up over here. We're not seeing as many things happening here, but let's go take a look. Does this look familiar, y'all? Because Uniswap. Hold on. Let me pull up Uniswap. Uniswap. Right. So here is Uniswap. All right. There's all kinds of crazy announcement stuff happening. Hold on. Let me kill all of the things. Right. So here is Uniswap, y'all. Right. Recognize it now. Welcome to Honeyswap. Interesting. Very, very similar. Uniswap uses these pinks and blues, and Honeyswap goes with greens and yellows. So there you go. This is the Uniswap. It looks exactly the same. The difference is that the Honeyswap is basically using XDAI to be able to trade, and here you can see on their own site, which is to get into the Honeyswap, you want to go into, let me make this smaller so that it makes sense. It's going to be honeyswap.org. So honeyswap.org is this. It will land you over here. Then you can connect to the wallet, and be able to actually go in and do your thing. The Honeyswap protocol analytics. So you can see here on their page of what they have, and as you can see, they have wrapped on XDAI, stake on XDAI, moons on XDAI. So everything is on XDAI, including Uniswap on XDAI. You can actually trade it and provide liquidity within it. So it works exactly the same as Uniswap. The only difference is that it's on XDAI, and because it's on that, the fees are way, way, way less. If you're interested to learn about it, there is the documentation, so you can read about it. including the developer links, the reference stuff, to be able to read and how it all works and stuff. So we can take a very quick look over here while that is happening. Here is the FAQ, so you can actually purchase Honey or HNY. And here is how to buy it, and this is what the total supply, so you can learn definitely about it and how it's all distributed. Like I said, it's very similar to the Uniswap. The difference is that it's working off of um, interesting. So this is very interesting, y'all, because this, even though it says, look at this, you see how it says how Uniswap works. uh, this, I am not on Uniswap's website. I am actually on Honeyswap, and right now I am on Honeyswap's website. And let me see if I can do something over here. Hold on, hold on, hold on. No. Cancel. No. Oh my gosh. Sorry, y'all. Sorry. Okay, you can see it now. I did want to do one thing. I want to show you. Uh, oh my goodness. Hold on. My apologies, y'all. I am not technologically savvy, as they say. But I do want you to see this. So, all right, let me change it. So now you should be able to see what I see. Do you see what I see? It says Honeyswap right over here. You see this? Right over here. So how did I get there? Well, I was on Honeyswap the whole time and clicked on, but it says how Uniswap works, right? So it actually does explain how Uniswap. Never mind. It's my own silliness for not reading the whole thing. You can definitely read their white paper if you're interested. Uniswap v2 Core, and a lot of it is very much utilizing the Uniswap stuff. The difference is that it's a Honeyswap, and like I said, it's just lower fees. So if you are curious, if you're interested, definitely check out Honeyswap. Not a financial advice. I own no stakes in it. You checking it out, not checking it out, I gain nothing, lose nothing. I just thought it would be very cool to share what I have discovered. All right, well, that wraps it up for today. I do wish you an excellent Monday. Do me a huge favor, subscribe, smash the like button, send it over to folks, hit the bell notification, whatever you need to do to get notified. Join me tomorrow if you are interested and so inclined. Thank you all for watching. We're about to get into the Q&A for those watching live. For everybody else, stay forever money blessed, and do remember, you are only one deal away.